Hello, everybody. My name's Aine. I am 15 years old, and I'm a sophomore at Heron High School. So I have a quick question for you guys. How many of you use Twitter? Just raise your glow stick if you use Twitter. Well, you guys obviously aren't alone. There are about 280 million active Twitter users, and about 500 million tweets are sent out every day. And I know it'll be easy to say that Twitter is slowly taking over the world and other forms of social media. Well, I mean, you're not wrong. I know you guys have probably seen the hashtags Bring Back Our Girls, which was about the Boko Haram kidnapping of 200 Nigerian girls back in 2014. And now still, not all 200 girls have returned home. Or more recently, Pray for Nepal, which was about the first 7.8 magnitude earthquake that shook Nepal. That's death toll rise to be over 7,000. And more recently, this past week, they had another earthquake, and that death toll has rise to over 8,000. And now more locally or nationally, the Baltimore riots, which were sprouted from a dispute with police officers and an issue over police brutality. And now, like I said, you have probably seen all of these, despite if you have a Twitter or not. And that's essentially what Twitter activism is. And it's connecting the world as a social glue, and it's also a good way to spark real activism and change. But will the revolution really be tweeted? Now, my first main point, I want to talk about how Twitter activism acts like some sort of social glue that keeps the world connected. Now, prior to the creation of TV and Twitter and like Facebook and other forms of social media, there was a very limited amount of ways that you could see what was going on the other side of the world. And one of those ways would be packing up your bags and planning a trip to travel all the way across the country just to see what was happening. Now, with the creation of Twitter and social media, in television, the need for that has decreased. This Twitter activism has sparked new inquiry about what's going on around the world. And also, Twitter activism is crafting a web of connections using hashtags, retweets, and mentions. Now, I want to talk about why the revolution will be tweeted. Malcolm Gladwell, he's a very well-known author. He wrote The Tipping Point and Blink, but he also wrote a small essay called Small Changes, and it's about how the revolution won't be tweeted. Now, Malcolm Gladwell brings up some very good points. He talks about how there's a sense of consciousness, a false sense of consciousness that's brought upon people when they use social media, and that they know everything that's going on. And even a sense of that communication prior to Twitter and other forms of social media didn't exist. And he also talks about how the civil rights movement of the 1960s was successfully created and achieved without the use of social media at all, because obviously it wasn't created. But even though Malcolm Gladwell brings up some very good points, I think the revolution will be tweeted. Because my generation and the generations to come, let's face it, are gonna become more and more dependent on technology and more dependent on social media. And despite it may have some downfalls, but it connects the world, and it gives people like me and people younger than me an opportunity to explore what's going on around the world without having to leave our homes. And also, with my generation, there's a sense of universal acceptance, that more things are being accepted than other things that were like decades ago. And those two things, at least in my opinion, are why the revolution will be tweeted. And now, finally, I want to talk about how we can turn Twitter activism into real activism, or real physical activism. Now, I would like to make it clear that Twitter activism should be used as a tool to aid physical activism, because it seems really easy to share an opinion on Twitter or talk about something that you have a problem with, but not seeking to do anything physical to change it. And also, I want to talk about how we can use Twitter activism right here in our backyards. And I know most of you have heard about or had recently heard about the Religious Freedom Reformation Act, or RFRA, and the impact that had not only on the state of Indiana, but on the entire nation. And that law was protested starting with a small group of people, whether it be small businesses or the LGBTQ community and their allies, seeing an issue with this bill and deciding to take a stand against it by organizing peaceful protests or organizing sit-ins or ways to prevent this from happening. And also, they took to Twitter and other forms of social media expressing their opinions and educating other people on it. And not only did that help locally into getting the law changed and revised in about less than a week after it was put in place, but also it spread to be a national issue. Like when I took my spring break trip to New Orleans earlier last month, 3 out of the 5 days that we were there was something about Indiana and the RFRA bill on their local news. And even the President of the United States joked about it during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And what I see is that Twitter activism, or that is a perfect example of how Twitter activism and social media activism was used as a tool to aid real change. And so I know I've talked about how Twitter activism is a social glue, how the revolution will be tweeted, and also how we can use Twitter activism to spark local and global change. And now, before I step off the stage and conclude my talk, I want to encourage you to all do one thing, and that's change society one tweet at a time. Thank you.